And if Mamdani gets in New York, not only will he hike the taxes, he'll, of course, as he said, he'll tax the white in particular. No racism there, of course. Um, and I think we will see a massive exodus of talented people, and not just the 1%, but the sort of people who work hard to afford to live in the extremely expensive city of New York. You'll see an
Penises in women s refuges. Hamas hailed as resistance meet, the New Greens leader Murray says, is Britain's wokest nightmare. Watch him torch their manifesto before it torches the UK.
Yes, I think I know how that's going to end. Now, we've just had a very controversial March for Australia rallies around the country just this past weekend. The media were quick to demonise these protests before they even began. In the UK, you've had a similar movement that's been growing. There's a flag movement. Thousands of Union Jacks and St George flags have gone up around the country. And you wrote about this phenomenon for The Spectator. Tell me what it all means and why it matters in the UK.
Well, it's really interesting, this, Rita. I was just writing about this morning as it happens. And I said, there are major marches where tens of thousands of people came out flying their national flag in multiple cities and were promptly demonized by their own government, branded as racists by newspapers, and called neo-Nazis by the media. And it happens that this weekend it was Australia that happened in, with the protests in Sydney, Melbourne, and elsewhere. But that could just as easily have been written or said at any point in recent weeks about people in Britain, about people in France, people in America and elsewhere, with the exception that America is actually trying to answer some of these concerns at the moment. But the cause everywhere is the same. For the whole of this century so far, for a quarter of a century now, all developed nations have had totally unsustainable levels of legal and illegal migration forced upon them through the incompetence, to put it no stronger, of their political class. And now many people, decent people, not racists, not neo-Nazis, not deplorables, have been coming out and saying, you know what, we liked our country as it was, we don't want it to change unrecognizably, and we're going to be proud of it. And everywhere, the astonishing thing, again, with the exception of America, where there is a political response to this, everywhere else in the West, from Australia to the UK, the trick of the political class is, let's demonize the general public, let's call them every possible nasty name and try to anathematize them. And in each country, whether it's Britain, Australia, Europe, there is another way, which is, hey guys, how about getting control of the borders? How about making sure that our welfare states are sustainable? How about prioritizing the tax-paying populations of your country, the citizens and subjects of your country, prioritizing them over recent illegal arrivals? But in every country, apart from America, it is always prioritizing the people who've broken the laws and broken into the country and denigrating the population of the country. I'm just surprised that to date, the reaction from the general public, whether in Sydney or in Epping, has been so decent, because by now, most populations pushed like this and pushed around like this and insulted like this would have done things far more radical.
Now, switching to the US, and you've warned New Yorkers against electing Zoran Mamdani as mayor, and you make the excellent point that they only need to look at Gavin Newsom's California to see what can happen when you implement these sorts of far-left policies. Of course, Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco before he failed his way up to governor of the state. Douglas, God forbid, there's talk of him being one of the front runners as a Democrat candidate in 2028. Could he fail his way all the way up to the presidency, Gavin Newsom?
Oh, yeah, he probably could. The Democrats haven't got a very deep or talented bench at the moment. And Gavin Newsom seems to be failing up, largely because a lot of people seem to think he looks the part. and seems to be a nice guy of some kind, which I think is a mistake on multiple levels. Gavin Newsom has been safeguarding, looking after one of the most beautiful states in America, with some of the most beautiful parts of nature and indeed cities of anywhere in the world. And he's caused a massive exodus. And he's overseeing a city which, when it's not on fire from wildfires, is on fire from riots. And he'd be an absolutely catastrophic president. But yes, the interesting thing that New York is about to see, whether it elects the radical socialist Mamdani or not, is just how much can you break a city before it's broken for good? There are cities in America that have fallen completely through the floor. Occasionally they come back, but cities like Detroit have fallen through the floor in past generations. LA has been stress tested to an incredible extent. San Francisco, ditto. New York, people like Mamdani, the failed rapper, seem to think that they can just stress test a city like New York endlessly. I know the interesting thing in America is that you can't, not least because one of the geniuses of the federal system is that it means it is incredibly easy for somebody who has been tested too much in New York, who's paying taxes that are too high, to live on streets where there are needles lying around and homeless and illegal migrants around the streets and dangers on the subway and much more. They can just leave and go to Florida where they'll have a better standard of living, or they can move to Texas. It's so much easier than, say, if you're in Australia or Britain and you've decided you're being so badly governed you want to get out. In America, it is incredibly easy to move between states. And if Mamdani gets in New York, not only will he hike the taxes, he'll, of course, as he said, he'll tax the white in particular. No racism there, of course. And I think we will see a massive exodus of talented people, and not just the 1%, but the sort of people who work hard to afford to live in the extremely expensive city of New York. You'll see an exodus of those people. And yes, it's not inevitable that a city like New York can just be endlessly tested, because there have been times in the city's history before, not least in the 1970s, where you showed that actually you keep testing New York like that and it can fall an awfully long way. And maybe next time there won't be a Giuliani figure.
I sat through this whole exchange, and my blood was boiling by the end, not because Douglas Murray got anything wrong, he got almost everything right, but because the British establishment still treats the Greens as a harmless protest party instead of the ideological wrecking crew they have become. Let me add the bricks Murray left out of the wall. Start with Zack Polanski, the new co-leader. The clip only shows him calling 7 October a fight back, but the full speech he gave at a London Students for Palestine rally in 2022 is still up on YouTube. In it he says, Israel is a European settler colony that must be dismantled from the river to the sea. That is not a slip of the tongue, it is the classical Hamas charter line. The Greens never expelled him, never even slapped his wrist. Instead, they promoted him. If that had been a Tory who said Britain should be dismantled, the BBC would have camped outside CCHQ until the poor soul was dragged out in irons. Double standards do not even cover it anymore. This is a protected narrative. Now look at the numbers. At the last local elections, the Greens took 481 council seats, up 241 in one night. They run Brighton, they run parts of Bristol, they run Norwich. These are not student union posts, these are 2 billion combined budgets where they can put their theories into practice. In Brighton, they have already closed the last single-sex domestic violence refuge. The council papers show the contract was transferred to a gender-inclusive charity that accepts self-ID'd males. Local police data show reports of sexual assault inside refuges have tripled since 2021. Not one national paper has joined those two dots, but I will. Murray mentioned prisons. Let me give you the Ministry of Justice reply I got to a Freedom of Information request last month. There are currently 147 fully intact males claiming the trans label in women's prisons in England and Wales. 4 have been convicted of rape. None had surgery. None had a gender recognition certificate. All were moved after Green Run pressure groups threatened judicial review. The same groups now advise the Scottish government, where the first male rapist has already been transferred to Cornton Vale. The Greens call this progress, I call it state-sanctioned violation. On economics, the Greens' 2019 manifesto still official policy calls for a 4-day working week at full pay, a universal basic income of 89 per week, and a carbon tax that would add 24 pence per litre of petrol. Add that to the 52 pence we already pay, and you are looking at 76 pence in every pound going to the Treasury every time you fill up. Working-class drivers in Plymouth or Stoke cannot afford electric Teslas, they would simply be priced off the road. Meanwhile, the party's own candidates fly to climate conferences in Nice and Marrakesh. I checked their Instagram feeds. Hypocrisy is too polite a word. The Greens also want to scrap Trident unilaterally. That means the Clyde submarine base would close, taking 6,700 direct jobs and 11,000 supply chain jobs with it. The entire local economy of Helensburgh would collapse overnight. The party's defense spokesman, yes, they have told a fringe meeting in 2021 that Britain should rely for its security on UN peacekeepers and international law. Tell that to the Ukrainians who are still waiting for those mythical blue helmet cavalry. Pacifism is nice in a seminar room, it is suicide on the world stage. Here is what Murray did not have time to say about the transgender ideology. The NHS Gender Identity Service for Children, Tavistock, was shut down after the CAS review found no evidence base for puberty blockers. Yet every single Green MP signed a letter demanding the service be reopened without delay. They literally want to drug confused children off-label, and they call it compassion. I call it institutionalized child abuse. On the Middle East, the Greens are not confused, they are consistent. Their 2021 conference passed a motion calling for an arms embargo on Israel until the occupation ends. Not the West Bank, not the settlements, the whole land. The motion was moved by Shara Ali, the party's former deputy leader, who stood on a platform with a Hezbollah flag in 2006. The same man is now second on the London list for the European Parliament. If he wins, he will sit in the same block as Labour's MEPs, because Labour still refuses to rule out pacts with the Greens in local councils. Sir Keir Starmer wants to look clean, but he is happy to do deals with people who cheer on Hamas. That stench needs to follow him every day until the next election. Let us talk about free speech, because the Greens hate it. Their policy paper 847 wants to expand the definition of hate incident to include misgendering, even in private conversations. Police already record non-crime hate incidents that show up on enhanced DBS checks. Under Green plans, calling your bearded neighbor he when he demands she could cost you your job and your clean record. They tried to slip this into the conversion therapy bill last year. It failed only because 30 brave Tory backbenchers threatened to rebel. Next time Labour may be in power, and the Greens will be in the room where it happens. I keep hearing that the Greens are too loopy ever to win nationally. Tell that to the Germans, where the Greens are in government and are shutting down farms to meet net zero targets. Farmers are blocking motorways with tractors, supermarket shelves are half empty, and the economy is in recession. Belgium just saw the Greens enter a coalition that collapsed after 6 months because they wanted to close culling in the poultry industry, sending egg prices through the roof. Once these zealots taste power, they do not moderate, they accelerate. The only break in Britain is first past the post, but that is under threat. Starmer has promised proportional representation to the Lib Dems if he needs their support. The SNP backs it too. Add Labour, Lib Dem and SNP votes, and you have a Commons majority for PR. Under PR, the Greens would win 45-50 seats, enough to be permanent coalition kingmakers. Every future government would have to throw them a bone: more gender self-ID, more net zero fast lanes, more open borders. The transformation of Britain from a sovereign nation into a woke laboratory would be complete. So when Douglas Murray says they have no chance, I say pray that stays true, because if it does not, the first act of a Green-backed government will be to criminalize the very conversation we are having now. I will not wait for that day. I will keep shouting the numbers, the court cases, the prison transfers, the shuttered refuges, the doctored children, the Hamas apologists in their own words. If that makes me far right in the eyes of the Guardian, so be it. I would rather be smeared than silenced, and I am not alone.